Hello, welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children, the podcast where I share the recordings of the bedtime stories I've improvised for my children over the years. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Tonight we continue the story of Francine. Years have passed, and she's not even sure that the fairy Saphira was anything more than just a dream. But one day, the time of need arrives. As a listening note, this story contains some mild peril, which may be intense for the very youngest listeners. I hope you enjoy the story.
Francine woke up the next morning, wondering if the incident with the frog that became the fairy Saphira had all just been a dream. She was not quite sure. It seemed like the kind of thing that could only happen in a dream. But her cough was gone, and she was happy of that. She spent the next day expecting Saphira to pop up any moment to save her from some terrible problem. But it did not happen. And it did not happen that week, and it did not happen that month, and it did not happen that year. And after 2 years, and then 3 years had gone by, Francine began to be quite sure that it had all just been a dream. And by the time the 4th year and the 5th year had gone by, Francine no longer even remembered it. She had quite forgotten about her cough and about her strange dream of the frog that became a fairy. And then came the day when Francine turned 12 years old. She turned 12 years old, and she went to the birthday party that she had planned, a birthday party in the best park in the city. She had invited 12 of her very best friends, and they had a wonderful day.
A wonderful day?
A wonderful day. They played ball, they played tag, they played hide and seek, they dug in the sandbox, they swung on the swings, they slid on the slides, they merrily went round on the merry-go-round. And then they had cake and ice cream, and Francine opened her presents. She got a pogo stick that she had always wanted. She got a new hairbrush and a mirror and some earrings to wear in her newly pierced ears. She had gotten her ears pierced the day before.
What does ear pierced mean?
Well, you know how Mommy has little holes in her ears that she puts earrings into?
Yeah.
Well, at some point, many people decide to go and get their ears pierced, which means they go someplace and they sort of give you like a little shot in your ear that puts a little hole in your ear, and then they put a little earring in it, and you have to leave the earring in for several weeks until the hole heals up, and then you have pierced ears and you can wear earrings.
You know what?
What?
One person in my class that is still a little girl.
Uh-huh.
You know what?
What?
She got her ears pierced.
Did that happen recently, or did her parents have them pierced when she was a little baby?
Had her ears pierced when she was a little baby.
Yeah, some parents have their children's ears pierced when they're little babies.
And she's been wearing red earrings all month. Every time we go to school, she's
Red
wearing
earrings, huh?
red earrings.
Well, Mommy and I's rule is that when you all want to get your ears pierced, because it hurts a little bit, when you want to get your ears pierced and you're old enough to take care of the earrings, then you're welcome to. It's up to you.
I'm never gonna get my ears.
You never have to if you don't want to.
I'm suspecting I will.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if you both do someday. And when you decide you want to, then that's fine.
Mommy was grown up and she got her ears.
I don't know how old Mommy was when she got her ears pierced. I think she was like 10, 11, 12. About that
Come on, let's just go on with the story?
Yes, well, you all were the ones who started talking about this. Anyway, she opened the last box. As she walked toward it, she saw something strange. The box sort of shook a little bit, kind of wiggled. And she thought, what in the world? And as she took the wrapping paper off, the box was shaking more. And then Francine was a little worried, so she sort of put her ear up to the box to see if she could hear something moving inside. And when she did, she heard, woof! And she thought, and she opened the box, and there inside was the most beautiful little puppy she'd ever seen. She picked it up, and it was all soft and warm and cuddly. And she hugged it to her, and the puppy laid its head down on her shoulder, and she scratched it behind the ears. She said, Mom and Dad, this is the best birthday ever. She said, what?
What does this have to do with the fairy?
I don't know. She said, I have to come up with a name for him. She said, is it a boy dog or a girl dog? What do you think, Diana? Was it a boy dog or a girl dog?
A girl dog.
It was a girl dog, yes. And she said, okay, so I have to pick a girl name. Let me think. What name do you think she picked, Becca? Loretta? Yes. She said, I'm going to name you Loretta. And she put the puppy down, and she and her friends had fun running around with the puppy. And then her mom called her to tell her that one of her friends had to leave, so she should come tell her friend goodbye. So she turned and she went to where her friend was to tell her goodbye. And she was about halfway there when she remembered the puppy, and her other friends had not remembered the puppy either, and the puppy was headed straight towards the parking lot of the park. And Francine turned and she began to run, yelling, stop, stop, to the puppy. And she was running as fast as she could, but the puppy thought she was playing a game. And the puppy ran right out into the street, and there was a big truck coming. And the puppy, not seeing it, just sat down right in the middle of the street, and Francine ran towards it. And then she could hear her mom and dad yelling at her to stop, but she wasn't going to stop. She was going to get that puppy. She wasn't going to let her new puppy get hit by a truck. And she ran out, and as she ran out into the street, she realized that she had made a terrible mistake, because she realized that the truck was moving too fast, and it wasn't going to be able to stop, and it was going to hit her and the puppy. And she thought, oh no, and that was the last thought she had before suddenly everything stopped. And it was absolutely quiet. The puppy wasn't moving. The truck wasn't moving. Francine looked down at her own hands, and she could see that they were shaking just slightly because she'd been so scared. And she looked around and she noticed a second thing. The second thing that she noticed was that besides everything being completely still, everything looked just slightly blue. And then out of one corner of her eye, Francine saw just a little movement. And she turned, and there was something else moving. It was flying through the air towards her unbelievably quickly. And Francine blinked, and in the space of that blink, suddenly, hovering there in the air in front of her, was a fairy. And in that moment, Francine remembered. She remembered her dream about the frog and the fairy that she had freed, and she gave a little smile, and she said, "Hello, Saphira." And Saphira said, "Hello, Francine." She said, "Please to pick up the puppy and get to safety. I can't keep things frozen very long. And so Francine did as the fairy asked. She picked up at the puppy and she walked off the street back onto the grass of the park. And as her foot hit the grass, suddenly the puppy was yelping in her arms and everything was the normal color, and she could hear her mother and father yelling for her, and she could hear the screeching of the truck's brakes behind her as it tried to brake to avoid hitting a little girl and a puppy who were no longer there. And her mom came in. Her mom looked very angry with her. She said, "Francine, don't you ever run out in the street again. Not after a puppy, not after a ball, not after anything. Do you understand me?" And Francine said, "Yes, Mommy." And her mommy gave her a big hug and she said, "I was so scared." And Francine said, "I was scared too, Mommy." She said, "But Saphira saved me." And her mommy said, "Who?" And Francine shrugged and she said, "Never mind." But then she turned and looked back. And she turned and she looked back, and as the truck pulled away, she saw sitting there on the other side of the street, just on the edge, right in the grass on the edge, a small blue frog. And although Francine could not be sure, because the frog was so small and was all the way on the other side of the street, she could have sworn that it winked at her. And she turned to point it out to her mother. But when she had turned back, the frog was gone. And that is the story of the second time that Francine saw Saphira. And if you would like, tomorrow night, I will tell you the story of the third time.
Yeah!
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but heckling and clever commentary were supplied by my children. The theme music was created by Brandon Thompson, and the logo was designed by Silas Wendelin. If you know someone who might enjoy the stories, please tell them about the show. Our website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com, and preview snippets are posted to most social media. I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.